These 42 kitchen hacks from Grandma are so effective that modern enthusiasts have rediscovered them, and you'll wonder why no one told you sooner. Some save you time, others rescue entire situations, but all transform how you live. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of these genius kitchen hacks, and now have fun with the video. Close the toilet lid before flushing. At Grandma's, the toilet lid was always closed, not out of principle, but out of common sense. When flushing, tiny droplets shoot into the air, full of germs that settle on toothbrushes and towels. Today, it's called toilet plume. Grandma called it simply disgusting. So, lid down and done. Without any drama. She didn't discuss, she acted. And anyone who adopts her simple hack today ensures more hygiene in the bathroom than with any chemical spray. Sometimes the old solution is simply the best. Diaper cream against pimples. When a pimple appeared on us, Grandma didn't reach for makeup but for diaper cream. Zinc oxide, she said, heals everything that's red and irritated. And she was right. A tiny dab on the spot, let it work overnight. In the morning, the thing was half as bad. What helps babies helps us too. She never made a big fuss about it, just acted. Today, the same tube is still on the shelf, usually with the diapers, but it really belongs in the adult bathroom. Heat against mosquito bites. The spoon hack. When we came home bitten up in summer, Grandma didn't get Fenistil. She took a teaspoon, held it under hot water, and pressed it on the bite. 5 seconds, no more needed. The itch disappeared like magic. Later I learned that heat interrupts the histamine reaction. Grandma didn't know that, she just knew it helps, and that was enough. In a time without pharmacies on every corner, a kettle was often the best medicine, and a spoon became a magic wand against the madness on the skin. Toothpaste for insect bites. At Grandma's, toothpaste wasn't just in the bathroom, it stood for ingenuity. When a mosquito bite raged, a small dab went on the skin. Nothing was massaged in, nothing explained. It cooled, it soothed, it worked. The menthol penetrated like fresh air, the baking soda calmed the rest. Simply with a white paste that everyone has at home. And at night, when you'd otherwise scratch in half sleep, it lay there like a silent guardian. Sometimes what heals is not loud, not expensive, but just clever, just like Grandma. Vicks VapoRub for calming inner restlessness or anxiety. When Grandma was restless, she didn't take a little tea, but her jar with the blue lid, a dab of Vicks under the nose, a deep breath. The scent of menthol and eucalyptus lay like a calming shawl around the nerves. No hocus pocus, but childhood, security, trust. Today it's called aromatherapy. Back then it was just Grandma. She knew what helped. A single breath could be enough to feel ground under your feet again. And it smelled like home. Use dental floss regularly. Grandma never had a bleaching kit. She had dental floss. Every evening, without discussion, while we children were already sleeping, it flowed, centimeter by centimeter, like clockwork. Her teeth remained firm, healthy, clear like porcelain into old age. Dental floss gets out what the brush can't. It's the invisible foundation of a real smile. Anyone who thinks brushing is enough is wrong. The enemy sits in between. Grandma knew that without studies. She didn't floss for a smile. She flossed because she didn't want to go to the dentist, and it worked. Save starchy pasta water for the sauce. Grandma never needed sauce binders. She took what was left in the pot, the pasta water, a cup just before draining. With it, she turned tomato sauce into silk and cream into real shine. The starch in it bound everything into a creamy coat that stuck to the pasta like a promise. It wasn't a hack, it was craftsmanship, and it tasted good. Today we pour the gold down the sink. Back then, nothing was wasted, especially not flavor. Anyone who has experienced it once saves it. Anyone who forgets misses the best part of cooking. Almond milk as a replacement for bad milk. When the milk was sour, the day wasn't ruined for us. Grandma always had something in the pantry that lasted longer. Today, it would be almond milk. Unopened, shelf-stable for weeks, mild in taste, usable everywhere. In coffee, in muesli, even in pancake batter. A replacement that doesn't want to be one but goes along with everything. Back then it was condensed milk. Today it's plant milk. The idea remains. Be prepared, not having to improvise, but wisely provided for. Anyone who understands the principle never has stress in the morning over flaky milk again. And Grandma? She would have had it on the shelf long ago, guaranteed. Spray clothes with vodka to remove odors. Grandma didn't wash clothes just because they smelled. She reached for the spray bottle with vodka, a spritz under the arms, one at the collar, then to the fresh air. Alcohol kills bacteria without a wash cycle. The fabric stayed dry, the colors vibrant. Long before there were fabric refreshers, Grandma had her solution. Anyone who knows it thinks of vodka not just for Saturday night, but also for a shirt that smells like new again. Baking soda against burnt-on food. When something was burnt, Grandma didn't reach for the scouring sponge. She took baking soda, a spoon in the pot, some water added, briefly boiled, and the crust bubbled away by itself. Sometimes she let it soak overnight. The next morning the bottom was clean, as if nothing had happened. She did it with a calmness, as if she'd done it 1,000 times. She had. Because baking soda wasn't for baking at her place. It was for everything else, and that's what it was perfect for. Apple piece keeps cake fresh. Grandma cut off a piece of apple, placed it next to the cake, and closed the tin box. The next day the edge was still soft, the bottom still juicy, the taste just like freshly baked. No fresh keeping bag, no kitchen hack with paper towel, just an apple that did its job. It released moisture, the cake absorbed it, without sticking, without sweating. That worked for yeast braid as well as for sponge cake. And while today everything is packaged, coated, and sealed, a slice of fruit was enough for her. That wasn't witchcraft, that was experience. Potato saves oversalted soup. When the soup was oversalted, Grandma didn't make a face. She took a potato, peeled it, cut it into pieces, and put it in the pot. The broth continued to cook, but the salt quietly migrated into the tuber. After a few minutes, the taste was round again, not watered down, but saved. The potato didn't add anything, it balanced. And then it was just thrown out. Not pretty, not tasty, but damn useful. That's how it was with Grandma. It wasn't discussed, it was done. And usually it worked just like that. Cutting onions without tears. Grandma never cried when cutting onions, not because she was made of steel, but because she cut smarter. The onion went briefly in water, the knife was moistened, and a sip of water stayed in the mouth. No gas rising up, no tear flowing. It looked strange, but worked every time. While others sniffled, she cut on, precise and calm. She didn't need glasses, no hacks from the internet, just a sharp knife, a bit of water, and decades of experience. And if a tear did flow, it wasn't because of the onion, but because of the memory. Red wine on carpet, salt on it. When red wine landed on the carpet at Grandma's, there was no shouting, no scolding. It was sprinkled, a thick layer of salt, immediately, as if from the movement. The white became pink, the pink became dry. The salt soaked up the wine before the fabric could hold it. After an hour, the stain was history, the carpet saved, the evening too. For her, that wasn't an emergency, but routine, because she knew that the solution is often already there, right within reach, somewhere next to the pepper. You just had to grab it. Freeze bread for more freshness. Grandma had bread in stock, frozen, carefully packed with butter paper between the slices. But when visitors came, it didn't come cold to the table. It came hot from the oven. 5 minutes, no more needed. Then the crust cracked. The crumb was soft. The scent wafted through the house, like before. No one asked if it was fresh. It was fresh. Not from the day, but from the handling. Bread didn't get old at her place. It was made new, with heat, feeling, and respect for what is there. And that's why it tasted so good, every time. Vinegar as all-purpose cleaner. Grandma didn't have a cabinet full of cleaners. She had vinegar. With it, everything that was used got clean. The sink shone, the kettle was lime-free, the windows streak-free. A dash in the mop water, a spray on the faucet, done. No scent of chemicals, but a hint of clarity. Vinegar dissolved what was stuck, grease, lime, odor. Everything disappeared when it appeared, and if someone asked why it worked so well, she just shrugged. Because it just works, and because you don't need to reinvent everything just because it's old-fashioned. Sometimes a bottle is enough. The right one. Baby powder against oil stains. An oil stain on the blouse was no drama for Grandma. She reached for the powder box, sprinkled the spot, and let it sit. For hours, sometimes overnight. In the morning, the fat was gone, the powder gray, the blouse saved. The powder sucked the oil out of the fiber, quietly, thoroughly, reliably. Then it was brushed off, washed, worn. And no one ever knew there was once a mishap. For Grandma, that wasn't a rescue. It was routine, and maybe a bit of magic from the nursery. Hydrogen peroxide for blood. A blood stain was no reason for Grandma to get excited. She got the brown bottle, dripped a few drops of hydrogen peroxide on the fabric, and then came the fizzing. The stain lifted as if it wanted to disappear on its own. No rubbing or scrubbing. Then a cold rinse. Done. The cloth was clean again. The problem solved. For her, that wasn't chemistry. It was a tool. Anyone who has seen it once no longer believes in expensive stain removers. Only in what really works, without neon-colored labels. Shaving foam against makeup stains. A makeup stain on the collar was no reason for Grandma to panic. She got the shaving foam from the bathroom, put a dab on the fabric, and let it work. No scrubbing, no rubbing. Just let it soak, rinse out, be amazed. The stain disappeared. The fabric stayed intact because shaving foam dissolves the fat that holds the color. She didn't know that from a lab, she knew it from experience. For her, the foam wasn't a luxury product, but a little helper with great effect, one that works and never costs much, like everything she used. And what still works today. Enzyme cleaner for pet urine. Pet urine didn't smell like trouble to Grandma, but like work. She would have loved enzyme cleaner. Not because it covers up, but because it breaks down. The stain disappears, the odor with it, and the pet finds no trace left. No remarking, no endless scrubbing, just a few sprays, some patience, a clean home. Enzymes do what chemicals can't. They break down the problem until nothing remains. Grandma would have understood that, because she knew that cleanliness doesn't have to smell, it just has to work. And because she preferred to prevent rather than clean twice. Always. Paper and iron against wax on carpet. When candle wax dripped onto the carpet, Grandma stayed calm. She grabbed kitchen paper, turned on the iron, and got to work. The paper sucked up the wax as soon as it melted, layer by layer, until nothing was left. The carpet stayed intact, the fibers undamaged. No panic, just warmth and patience. For her, that was every day, not an exception. Like so much that seems complicated today, but was simple back then. Anyone who does it this way saves not only the carpet, but also the evening. And in the end, no one asks where the stain once was. Orange peels against mosquitoes. When mosquitoes came in the evening, Grandma didn't spray anything. She put orange peels on the windowsill, just like that. And suddenly it smelled like summer, not like chemicals. The peel dried slowly, released its oil, kept the pests away. Sometimes she lightly pressed the peels to make it smell better. The effect was there, the effort wasn't. For her, that wasn't a hack, but dealing with what was there. Anyone who throws away orange peels today gives away a piece of old knowledge. And anyone who uses them lives a bit like her. Better, smarter, gentler. Coffee grounds as fertilizer or odor stopper. Grandma never threw away coffee grounds. They went on the flowers, not in the trash. She knew what they could do. Fertilize, bind, neutralize. The odors in the fridge were gone. The soil in the pot stayed loose, rich, alive. A small leftover from breakfast that worked quietly in the background. Sometimes she dried it on a plate, sometimes mixed it into the watering water. And every time you thought, so simple, so clever. Anyone who buys compost and sets up air fresheners today should remember. Coffee grounds, and the knowledge that once stood on the stove. Eggshells as calcium fertilizer. Grandma never threw away eggshells. She dried them, crumbled them finely, and sprinkled them in the garden. Calcium, she said, strengthens the roots. Her tomatoes grew strong, bloomed without deficiency. No expensive fertilizers, just kitchen leftovers with effect. What was left from breakfast helped the soil. Simple, clear, effective. Anyone who saw it understood. Good things often lie in the invisible. You just have to know where to put them. Grandma knew that from experience. Hot water against weeds. When weeds grew out of the cracks, Grandma didn't set out a poison canister. She boiled water, a kettle full, straight from the kitchen, then poured over the greenery. Slowly, precisely, determined. The next day, everything was brown, wilted, ready to be swept away. Weeding was rarely necessary. Spray bottles never stood around. Just heat, experience, and a clear eye for what works. The boiling water hit the plant's life directly, without odor, without residue, and the yard was orderly again, as she liked it. Blend vegetable scraps for compost. Grandma carried her vegetable scraps to the garden piece by piece as it came. Today it goes faster. Blender on, water added, a few seconds. Done is the compost booster. What was just peel becomes nourishment for the soil. The mush seeps in, brings life to the earth, lets tomatoes grow as if they knew it. It doesn't smell, it doesn't rot, it works. Anyone who thinks compost needs time has only thought roughly. Anyone who blends thinks further. And Grandma, she wouldn't have needed it, but she would have nodded, because making future from leftovers was always right. Freeze food to avoid waste. Grandma was frugal with food, but never stingy. What was left didn't go in the trash, but in the freezer. Bread slices, soup, even cake, neatly packed, dated. Later it was thawed, heated, eaten as if freshly made. So a leftover piece became a safe dinner. An idea became a system. She didn't freeze because it was trendy. She did it because you protect what you value. Anyone who throws away today has a fridge, but not the attitude. And that was much more important to her. Canning instead of throwing away. Grandma threw nothing away. She canned. When summer brought too much, everything went into jars. The strawberries became sweet jam. Cucumbers were soaked in vinegar. Mushrooms made shelf-stable. A shelf in the cellar, neatly labeled, lasted through the winter. There wasn't just food there was care. Whoever cans thinks ahead. You protect what you love. No supermarket product can compete with that. Today it seems old-fashioned. Back then it was smart. And anyone who tries it quickly realizes how satisfying it is to provide for yourself. From leftovers to stock. From every day to a piece of security. Pillow between knees. When side sleeping. When Grandma noticed someone sitting at the breakfast table with a crooked back in the morning, she put an extra pillow in the guest room next visit. Not for the head pillow, for the knee. Side sleepers, she said, need support between their legs, otherwise the spine sags like an old beam bed. And indeed, whoever slept like that got up without back pain. A small pillow, great effect. It protects hips, back, and sleep. Today it's called ergonomic. Back then it was common sense, and that's exactly what it was. Counting sheep for sleep problems. At night, when the mind wouldn't calm down, Grandma had her hack. Counting sheep. No noise, no light, just a fence and a herd quietly jumping over. Always the same, always gentle. The mind got occupied, the thoughts became quiet. No brooding, just images. And eventually, you just fell asleep. No magic, just routine. Grandma said you just have to do it. And she was right. As so often. Barefoot walking for grounding. Barefoot on wet grass, before breakfast. Grandma said it wakes you up, makes you healthy. And she was right. Whoever walks barefoot feels the ground, feels themselves. No rubber sole dampens, no asphalt separates. Just skin and earth. It tickles, it tingles, it strengthens the feet and calms the mind. Today it's called earthing. Back then it was just normal, whether in the garden, on the field path, or by the lake. The earth carries us. It heals. It nourishes. It gives strength. You just have to feel it again, best with bare feet. Take breaks consciously. Grandma never pushed through. She interrupted. With a glance out the window, a tea on the stove, hands in her lap. 5 minutes just for herself. And then it went on. Not faster, but clearer. Breaks weren't a luxury, they were part of the day, like breathing between two sentences. Today we rush through as if there's something to win, but whoever pauses lives more consciously, and whoever lives consciously doesn't burn out but stays warm. Like Grandma, she knew when enough was enough for the moment. Sleep trick with lavender. In Grandma's bedroom, it often smelled of lavender. Not overpowering, more like a quiet memory of summer evenings and clean laundry. A small sachet in the pillow, sometimes a drop of oil on the sheet. The scent was like a gentle promise that thoughts could calm down. No TV, the phone stayed in the hall, just darkness, a deep breath, and sleep. Today it's called aromatherapy. Back then, it was care, and anyone who has experienced it knows. Lavender is more than a scent. It calms into the dream. A falling knife has no handle. Grandma stood at the stove. The knife slid off the edge. She didn't step forward, didn't reach out. A falling knife has no handle, she said calmly. Back then, we thought of the blade. Later, we understood. It applied to life too. When something falls, you let it fall. Whoever grabs it hurts themselves. Relationships, plans, dreams, not everything needs saving. Some things belong on the ground to be picked up anew. This sentence stayed. In the kitchen, in the heart. So simple, and yet so hard when it gets serious. You can't please everyone. Grandma stood at the kitchen table. The roast was perfect for her. Too spicy for the uncle, too fatty for the neighbor. She just shrugged and said her sentence that stayed. You can't please everyone. And with that, it was quiet. Not defiant, but wise. Whoever wants to please everyone bends themselves. Whoever bends stands crooked eventually. Grandma understood that long before there were self-help books. She stayed true to herself, friendly but clear. This sentence was her shield, and whoever internalizes it goes through life more easily, because they know when enough is enough. Stop overthinking. Grandma could tell when I had too much on my mind, when thoughts circled like birds in a storm. Then she put her hand on my shoulder and said just this one sentence. Stop overthinking. Not harshly, but full of warmth. And she was right. Brooding rarely brings solutions. You get tangled. You lose yourself. Back then there was less analyzing, more trusting. You went ahead, even if not everything was clear, and often it turned out fine anyway. This advice sounds simple, but it's worth gold, especially today, in this noisy world. Sort tasks sensibly. Grandma had no calendar full of colors. She just knew what needed doing. The important things first. The rest could wait or go. Today, there's a grid with 4 boxes named after a president, Eisenhower. He probably did it like Grandma. What burns gets done. What counts gets space. And all the small stuff goes in the oven or to someone else. Whoever thinks this way has more peace of mind, more time for what matters. And that's exactly what we often lack today, a grandma, or these 4 boxes. Small bucket on car trips. At the back of the back seat, under Grandma's crochet bag, a small plastic bucket, always with her, on every trip, when the traffic jam got too long, when the stomach didn't cooperate, when the picnic spot had no trash can. This bucket was reliable. You could throw in, pour in, even harvest in it. With the blackberries at the forest edge, the bucket was ready. Grandma thought ahead without much ado. Today it's called organization. Back then it was just smart. And this bucket often saved more than any navigation system. It smelled of solution, not plastic. Coffee filter as window cleaning cloth. Grandma never had glass cleaner in colorful bottles. She took vinegar water and an old coffee filter. With that, she wiped the windows spotless, leaving no streaks or lint. The filter absorbed like a sponge and polished like a pro. And when the sun shone through the panes, she said, "Now you can see again what's happening outside. No microfiber cloth ever worked like that." And somehow it always smelled a bit like freshly brewed life afterward, all without much effort, just with common sense. Cutting tubes for more uses. Grandma took the scissors when others had long bought a new tube. Whether toothpaste or hand cream, she just cut it open. And lo and behold, there was still something inside. Enough for 3 uses, sometimes more. That wasn't stinginess. It was smart care. For money, for things, for life. Whoever throws away tubes before they're empty also throws away value. Grandma never did that. She saw what others overlooked. In the tube, in everyday life. And that's what made her so special. Open jars with hot water. The jam jar was tight, really tight, but Grandma didn't curse. She turned on the tap, held the jar under hot water, and waited. Then she wrapped a cloth around the lid, turned it once firmly, and snap, open. Metal expands, she said. Glass stays cool. That simple it was. And that moment when it hissed quietly, it sounded like a small triumph. That's how common sense worked. without force, without plastic helpers, just with brains. Nylon stocking as dust collector. Grandma's old nylon stockings didn't end up in the trash. They hung ready in the pantry, prepared for their second act. Pulled over a wooden spoon, they became perfect dust collectors. Between radiator fins, behind the cabinet, even on the bookshelf. The dust stuck to them like magic. Grandma needed no sprays, no colorful dusters from TV. She had her hacks, and they worked quietly but thoroughly, like everything with her, with foresight instead of throwaway thinking. And if you now think that's it, far from it. There are still so many of these old tricks that are more relevant today than ever. If you want more of them, subscribe to our channel and stay with us. We're bringing back Grandma's clever knowledge, one hack at a time.